Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have an amazing panel that we'll be able to share with you. As you know, this is Cyber Month, Cyber Awareness Month. And so we want to learn and grow and continue to understand what's happening in our cyber world. And so we've had a lot of neat events happening this week. We have one more yet tomorrow that we'll share at the end. But we've had a lot of really good conversations this week. So thank you for those that have participated in several of them. And thank you for those of you that are coming today. My name's Pam Rowland. I am the Associate Dean of Engineering and Technology. And so it's my pleasure to be able to moderate today. And just a little bit about how this panel came together. So 10-year anniversary for a program that I helped start in my previous work, which is called CybHer. At the time that we started that program 10 years ago, there was 10% women in cybersecurity and a ton of openings, like millions of openings. So we said, it was a colleague of mine, and we were sitting in the graduation line, and we were watching the graduation, which I love to see, and we have it going on today. And we said, why are there not more females at our university? And so we just started taking one step at a time. And we started talking to more female students. We started talking to middle school and high school students. We started sharing hands-on activities. And we did see a significant growth. And the nation has also addressed this. And they have a lot of great initiatives. But, we're still not satisfied. We're only at about 25% women representation still in cybersecurity. So I said, well, why don't we get a panel together of women that have excelled in this field, right? And it's not that they're women that we're focusing on them today. It is because they are professionals that are contributing in a significant way to a field that needs all kinds of contributions, all kinds of diversity. And so guys in the room, we appreciate you and we need you because we need everybody. The only reason that sometimes we focus on women is because it's so underrepresented and there's so much potential in this field. So we just want awareness. We want female students. We want females to understand that there is a place for them in this field too. But the conversation today is for everybody because we want to hear from the professionals on how they got to where they are and some helpful tips. So you can get your questions ready because at the end, we'll give you a little time to ask your own personal questions. But to get started, I don't want to take away from these three amazing people. So I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves, tell them your name, your title, and then just a bit about who you are, a bit about your journey to how you got to where you're at. Let's just go ahead and start with you, Bob.
Great. My name is Vauda Stanfield. It's a real pleasure to be here today. When I did my computer science degree, I can tell you I was the only woman in most of my classes. So it's so exciting to see all these bright young ladies here today, as well as the gentlemen. We have a 3 million talent gap, so definitely need everybody, minorities included. And I started in cybersecurity in the early 2000s. I had a great chance to do an internship with the high school that I went to. And just one thing led to another. And I just said yes, kept saying yes to opportunities. I kept seeking the mentorship that I needed. And one step after another, it led me to now being the director of enterprise security architecture for Freeport-McMoRan, a large Fortune 200 mining company that's based out of Phoenix. And previous to that, I was the chief information security officer for PF Chang's and Payway. I was brought in after their credit card data breach to come in and implement a security program. So it's been an exciting career and love cyber.
Awesome. Wow. CISO over at PF Chang's, that's pretty amazing. So there have not been enough women CISOs in our industry. So I feel pretty honored to sit next to one. Hi, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to join the panel today. I am super stoked to see this room with standing room only in some places. I love seeing all of these happy faces, folks wanting to see how can we get into this industry. And, as Dr. Rowland said, is there a place for me? Yes, there definitely is. There are millions of openings across a wide variety of competencies in this field. And each and every one of you will find your niche, the thing that you love to do the most here. A little bit about me. I'm from Florida. My first job in security was working for a little company called Wang Global. They've since gone on to become a company called Jetronics. They specialized in writing point of sale software for places like Home Depot and First Union Bank on the East Coast. I learned how to write code back when you got paid by the line to write code. And my first foray into other than that was changing passwords in Active Directory. And just like you, Vauda, I have said yes to just about every opportunity to grow and learn. I've had some amazing mentors along the way. Every place I've ever worked, I would seek out a mentor. And for the last 15 years, I've added a career coach to that. The one thing that I can say that helps so much is really controlling your career trajectory. What do I want to do? And then work with someone to help plot those steps out, be it a mentor, be it an executive at your organization. See what, lights your passion and take it from there. Today, I work for the Bonadio Group, which is a top 50 CPA firm based out of Buffalo, New York. And I work in their FoxPointe Solutions cyber unit, where what we do is everything from security audits to security consulting. I run the PCI, Payment Card Industry Audit Union, and I also run the ISO 27001 audit unit as well. So we conduct ISO audits for organizations that do government work.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. So my name is Tereasa Kastel. I'm the Vice President of Identity and Access Management and Asset Management at American Express. And probably later I'll explain how those two fit together very, very nicely and the trends that are happening in the industry and the correlation between identity and access and then the assets that an organization has within their realm. With regard to my journey, I graduated from the University of Notre Dame long ago, and my degree is in Spanish. And I thought I was going to be in business, and so then I went on to get an MBA, and through my career, I ended up working in technology for some incredible individuals who invested heavily in me and my development in technology. So I had the pleasure of working as a project manager, as an example, and a program manager within the technology organizations or within the technology departments at the organizations I worked. Those included WebMD, University of Chicago hospitals, and then when we moved from the Midwest here to Arizona, I took a couple of years off to have my younger children, and I had them already. I just wanted to spend a little time raising them before they went to school. And then I rejoined the workforce at American Express as a contractor. And then through the investment that many people made in me, I advanced, through American Express to the position I have. That progression was over a 15-year period. So I can kind of speak to you about, what it is to interrupt your career, what it is to go after a change in career. I was in technology, but not in information security up until 15 years ago.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So you heard a lot in just that little introduction. You heard things like say yes, seek a mentor. There can be disruptions. Is there anybody in here, by the way, that is not a technology major? 1, 2, only a couple, 3 maybe. That's okay, right, Tereasa?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the critical thinking, the ability to learn, and the ability to learn at a curve angled about like that because of the pace of the technology and the pace of the threat actors. But yes, don't count yourself out. And oftentimes we look at a job description, we go, oh, do I fit that? Oh, I don't. And so you look at self-elimination versus looking at what you can bring to the table.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as you're talking around the table with your roommates, with your other people, and they start hearing what you're learning in the technology field, those of you that are in technology, and they're hearing about what you're talking about with cybersecurity, and they say, but it's too late for me. I'm already in whatever major. It's not, right? And so you can still encourage them to explore this area for their work if they are so inclined. All right, let's go ahead and move on. And I want to hear from you. So you have different paths that got you to cyber and to the position you're in. What were the things that lit your candle? What were the things that you saw and became passionate about that really propelled you to where you're at today? So let's start with Deb this time in the middle.
So I guess the one thing that really propelled me into cyber and lit my fire, so to speak, was moving away from a help desk position into a position where I was running an identity and access management program. I spent a year teaching myself Oracle SQL. That was not fun. But by the end of it, I could write queries. I could write scripts to update people's access. And when we made updates to our application, I was able to go back and test those things to make sure that we didn't break anything. And I discovered that I really had a knack for that. I was kind of a digger. So I decided I was going to stick with it. And then just over the years, I've added to my repertoire.
Sure. So my motivation has definitely changed over the years. Early in my career, I was super nerdy. So I just loved digging into any technical system, firewalls, intrusion prevention systems, learning how to hack. That was what was really cool and fun to me. And I always said, I never want to be a manager because, people, you can't program them to do what you want them to do. And they're so complicated. But eventually, after digging into technology enough, the people really started motivating me, connecting with people. Now my current passion is really mentoring the next generation. And that's what really lights my fire. I would say the thing that's lit my fire the entire time is I'm very passionate about people's privacy, their right to privacy, and protecting people's information because identity theft causes people to commit suicide, unfortunately. Like, it's that serious of an issue. And it also causes physical safety issues. Our water systems have been almost killed an entire town of people by attackers attacking those type of systems. So very passionate about safety and protecting people.
For me, I'm just innately curious. It just fascinates me what we can do when we're given the gifts of our intellect and we can apply that in very good ways. And I think it's a noble profession. I mean, there are very evil people that are seeking to do damage to our members, to our merchants, to our shareholders, to our colleagues. And so for me, it's a sort of a good and evil kind of situation. It's a very real thing that there are threat actors that want to do damage and want to destroy. And the only distance between them and their ability to execute are those of us who are in the cybersecurity profession. And so we have a lot of fun, and my team has a lot of fun at what we do, but it's very serious and it's very, very important. And so I think part of the passion is the comes with a level of humbleness that we're in this position to achieve what it is that we're being asked to achieve. And the weakest link in the chain is all that threat actor needs to find. And so it's so there's the serious side of it. The other side of it is that I like winning. Period. End of story. And the thing about cybersecurity is you win. Every day you walk out with a threat actor being thwarted, prevented, identified, arrested, you've won. And so the idea of natural competition in this space to a real adversary keeps me, up at night in a good way and wanting to come to work every single day. I mean, it is an incredible blessing to be able to wake up every day and go, I love what I do. I cannot wait to get there. And I get to do it with some of the best in the profession. And it's just a joy. I just love it.
That's awesome. How many of you want a job that you will love to wake up and go to? That's what you're here for, right? All right, let's pivot and just talk to students for a moment about what can they do to prepare themselves for the profession. And we talked a little bit about the critical thinking skills, but give them some practical tips.
I'll start. So the good news is that you don't have to have all of the technical skills that you see on the job description. You want to pay attention to the minimum requirements, make sure that you have those. But when it comes to preferred qualifications, do not be afraid to apply for a job that you have at least 50% of those things. Because I can tell you as a hiring manager with a 3 million talent gap, if I see that somebody is bright and driven and willing to put in the work and willing to be trained, I'm happy to pay $5,000 to go get them trained in a specific firewall system. So don't let that, and I will say that I do notice a difference between male and female applicants when I'm looking at resumes. I will have a lot of times men will apply if they have 30% of the minimum, and I'm not trying to generalize or stereotype genders, but I've noticed that men will apply if they have 30 to 50%. Oh yeah, good enough. Let me just put my name in the hat, see what happens kind of thing. I have women who have 95% of the things, and they come in like a scared sheep into the interview. Yeah, but they talk to me about all the things that they don't have when they actually have amazing careers and full potential. One of my rock star project managers, did that kind of thing. So women, please apply yourself, put your name in the hat, advocate for. I got my first job by saying, look, I am not the best technical expert here, but I am a really hard worker and I will put in whatever work that you need me to put in to excel at this job and give you what you need. And I got the job. So put yourself out there.
Yeah, I would say that there are massive studies about women self-selecting out themselves. It's less about discrimination and more about your own sense of inadequacy. So I would encourage everybody in the room, if it's something that interests you, apply. And just yesterday, I was interviewing someone who's just graduated from school, and he indicated, I'm concerned, how much expertise do you need? And what I'm looking for is some base foundational understanding. And to your point, Vauda, we'll invest. We invest heavily in the professional growth and development of members of our organization. We pay for boot camps, we pay for certifications, we have online training available through Safari and O'Reilly and a whole host of things. So what you don't know is less important to me. I'm looking for characteristics. I'm looking for somebody who's incredibly hungry. Like, I cannot feed them enough. I can't give them enough information. I can't give them enough of the business to go after. So I'm looking for hunger. I'm looking for innate curiosity. I'm looking for a track record of learning at a decent speed. And I'm looking for somebody with incredible integrity and an ability to communicate effectively. Those are the characteristics. If I've got that, I've got somebody that is likely to get hired, as this gentleman will be.
That's awesome. And yes, both of you have given some great qualities. When I'm looking for someone to add to my team, I look for someone they've got to be curious. And in our field of work as auditors, we do a lot of digging. And so that's where that curiosity comes in, because you just need to be able to ask a lot of questions and scratch beneath the surface and, put things together. We invest heavily in our teams as well when it comes to training and certifications. And we do a lot of goal setting with our teams, not really specific ABC goals, but what are the business needs and what are the things that interest you the most? We recently had one of our assessors who said, you know what, I really want to learn pen testing. So we're sending them through university so that they can get some background and education on penetration testing. We've built a fully offline lab for them, so it's air gapped. And then when they're ready, we're going to sponsor them for their CEH certification, and we're going to add them to our internal pen testing team. It's a win-win for the organization because we can reduce our reliance on external third parties. But then we also have an employee who raised their hand and says, hey, I love what I'm doing, but I want to do something else. Can you help me with that? And our response is, of course, absolutely. So it's really curiosity and that willingness to put in that hard work and just be really driven with everything that you do. Like Tressa said, the technology changes so quickly. The landscape is constantly changing. So we have to get in the habit of doing what we can to stay ahead of it. And when you see people, you can literally see the fire under their heels. They just love what they're doing. You can't help but feed it. You can't.
Good. Deb, you mentioned certifications. Should these students at this time of their life be seeking certifications, and which ones, and if so, which ones? Or should they wait until they get their first job?
You know, that can kind of be a double-edged sword. I've built my career with a great blend of formal education, experience, and certifications. My personal recommendation would be, hold off on the certs for now. And that's not in a bad way. It's because you want to be sure that this is what you want to invest in for yourself. You want to be sure that it's something that you're really passionate about before you start putting, that level of effort, because really it really is all about the financial investment, but also that time investment. Make sure that's something you really want to do before you start making, those types of decisions.
I'd add to that some certifications require years of work experience. And sometimes that work experience is a little less if you're a college grad with a certain degree. And I tend to definitely agree with what Deb said. Don't go out and over certify yourself, because it'll look a little awkward coming right out of college without a lot of work experience. But there are some not very expensive certifications that you may not need if you're graduating with a cyber degree. But if you're not graduating with a cyber degree, there are some less expensive certifications that don't require a huge time investment, but some time investment, so that you can at least have something on your resume that shows your interest, your proactiveness in pursuing that interest, and a willingness to invest in that ever so slightly. So there are some basic 101 type certifications that you can get to be familiar. And I would recommend that for those of you who raised your hand that are not in the cyber degree program.
Yeah, just to add that the specific certification that might give you a leg up entry level if you don't have a cyber degree is the Security Plus certification. And it's something that doesn't take a large investment. It's something that you could really study a book if you're book smart and take that certification, and it would give you a little bit of a leg up.
$100, right? A couple $100.
Great. And for those little side note, for those of you that are new to the CCE or are not aware, our directors here, Joe and Stephen, they have a cert prep room, and they have lots of great ways to help you, to point you in the right direction for studying for those exams. So take advantage of that as well. Okay, so let's have a little fun. What's the most unusual background that you hired in cybersecurity and took that risk on, or just saw something in a particular individual? You've already mentioned a few, but what's an unusual background that you might have hired, or that you worked with somebody that had a very unusual background?
Christian gospel singer, and famous, 30 million hits on YouTube. And what I loved about her is that she was very passionate about, she fed herself enough to where she didn't burn out. And that's what really fed her and what she loved to do. So she carved time out for it. She made time for it.
A math major. He was a double major in math, super scary smart, but loved cybersecurity and identity and access management.
I heard somebody who had a degree in psychology and wanted to apply that as it relates to what might motivate threat actors, try to understand not just their motivations, but the TTPs that they might use in an attack anatomy. I also want to just call out that, somebody took a risk on me. As I said, my degree was in Spanish. I'd worked in business, mostly in product management side and project management side. I didn't have a cyber background, but Fred Gibbons, the CISO at American Express, took a risk. And I think maybe it was that whole innate curiosity, a track record of quality work in another field.
Great, thank you. So we also have what's called the STEM Advisory Board. And the last time we met, Tereasa was at it, we had a really robust conversation around leadership. And it came out that, how important some leadership skills are. So I want to ask the panel if you could share advice on what you would consider to be important for a leadership skill, and how you develop that skill in yourself, and maybe some advice for our students on, we have, of course, of a diverse body of students from, some are very outgoing, some are not as outgoing. And what would your advice be to the students to develop some of those skills?
Okay, I'll start. So the biggest skills gap in cyber today is actually soft skills. When you look at surveys, it's the communication, ability to present, relating to your audience. There's a survey that a third of CISOs are looking to retire in the next year. A third of them are looking to change companies, and I guess the other third are willing to stay in place. But there's going to be, in addition to the talent gap, there's going to be a big vacuum in the management that's going to open up a lot of doors for entry level. But you need to develop those soft skills along the way, and mentorship, being willing, like after I've done big presentations, I've sought out a trusted person who was in the room and said, hey, can you give me some feedback on my presentation, and to hone my skills and hone my abilities. Stakeholder management in leadership is really important. Gaining alignment. That's been my biggest challenge, because I'm a driver and a pusher and I get it done. And unfortunately at higher levels in executive management organizations, that doesn't fly. You have to go, extend the carrot, not the stick. And, hey, how can we partner on this together? Understanding the other person's motivation and how to naturally motivate people to secure things instead of, coming in with a stick and being forceful. So that's been a journey for me. And the last thing that I'll say is just understanding your own personality type. So I love Myers-Briggs, and it helps us understand our strengths and our weaknesses, because you can't lead like anybody else. You have to lead from your own natural strengths. And so knowing those strengths and knowing those weaknesses is powerful.
I love what you said about Myers-Briggs. I actually did another type of a survey recently, and it has me classified as an amiable analytical. We did have someone on the team who was a dominant. That's a tough one. That's their dominant primary and secondary. But they do tell you a lot about who you are and how you operate. And sometimes they can give you insight that you never even knew that you had. I work really closely with interns and peers as a consulting manager. So, one of the things that has really worked for me is just taking that time to really connect with my team, because I couldn't do what I do as well as I do it without them. And I make sure to just always show that appreciation for them. And I have two rules with my team. One is that my office is a safe place. So if they're having a rough day and they just got off of a really brutal conference call, they need to vent or just stare at the wall, they can come into my office and shut the door and just take that break. And if they need to yell and let something out, they can do that too, because I know it's not directed at me. It's directed at something else that has really got them, wound up at the moment. But I also give them plenty of space. So if they have a day where there's a lot of work coming at them and they need to, we call it go dark so that they can focus, do it. I don't want to see you online for the rest of the day because I know you're working on, work product or testing controls or something of that nature. But I found that with me, it's all about building a really good relationship with my team. When you have that high level of trust and faith, it's returned 100-fold.
I would agree that authenticity is exceptionally important. I'm going to go a little bit different direction to give you some other thoughts. But in terms of leadership competencies, leadership demands courage. And so sometimes you have to be willing to kind of go out on a limb, challenge the status quo. And of course, you have to have a rationale for why you're doing that. I use a tool called the OFER, it's objectives. What are we all aligned on what the objectives are? What are the facts? What are the implications? And then what are we recommending? Then when my team comes in, it helps me understand, okay, it's a call at the margin, as many calls are. and I get through the understanding of their critical thinking. I may have additional information that they're unaware of. So my recommendation, or what the recommendation we go with, may be a little different, but at least we can go through that in a methodic way. The second thing that I would say is an external perspective is absolutely essential. And coming out of college and a university, you'll have a lot of that external perspective. But the longer you stay in a single organization, if you're not actively pursuing an external perspective, you can easily get very internally focused, if you will. And it's that external perspective that brings in new ideas, new ways of doing things, and greater levels of understanding of what's possible. Because sometimes you get a little constrained by the groupthink that happens. The other thing, and Deb mentioned it, but I think it's really important. I attended an identity conference, not a big shock, I'm sure, but the keynote speakers were from, I believe it was Harvard, if I remember correctly. And one was somebody who studied sort of social interactions and the impact of social media on the culture and how we interact with one another. And the other was a neuroscientist who studied how the brain functions. And there was a couple of key things that came out of that. And one was be sure to teach yourself and your children how to be alone. Otherwise, they will be lonely because they're so often connected. Also be sure, and this goes back to the communication needs, make sure that you're good at conversation and one-on-one, and that you have the courage to face somebody and have a conversation. I think sometimes we can hide behind the electronics and we take pride in our connections versus our relationships and the one-on-one conversations. The other thing that I would say is that for as much as the collaboration tools are very helpful in delivering capability, delivering outcomes, it can also create a groupthink. And then there's also the expectation that Deb mentioned, and that is, oh, well, we're slacking and we're emailing, so I'm always available to immediately give a response. And sometimes you need to say, let me think on that. Or you need to let your team or you or yourself go dark, because you've got to think, and you've got to think based on your experiences, your understandings of things, your research, to come to the table in a group setting to bring a perspective. If you just come straight into those group settings on a regular basis, chances are you're going to get groupthink. Give yourself time to think and give yourself time to contemplate alone.
I have one more thing to share specific to women in cybersecurity, as well as shy guys out there. One of my female mentors told me early in my career, always have the 60-second elevator pitch ready for your boss. When the boss or the boss's boss or the boss's boss's boss sees you and they ask how you're doing, they're not talking about your dog or your kids, unfortunately. Sometimes they legitimately care, but you want to have like those recent accomplishments that you've done just ready. Oh yeah, my team's working on this. We're really excited about this. We're exploring this new possibility that could bring a lot of value for the company. Have those things ready. Perception management is especially important, because a lot of times as women, like, you know, I've noticed that in my career that guys have tended to be more extroverted, willing to share their accomplishments, brag a little bit. And sometimes women are like, I'm just going to be nose down and my work will speak for itself. And I can tell you it does not. You have to sell your work.
Oh my gosh, so right. You know, you put it well, you know, speak for your own work, take up space. Don't be afraid to take up that space, sit up, make sure that people can see you and those great things that you're doing. You know, have that 60-second elevator pitch ready. Here are the 3 great things that me or my team has accomplished this week, or that we're working on, or we know that this isn't an initiative that's important to you. So we're working on getting that information back.
Right. And I think succinctness and brevity is especially appreciated the higher up you go. I used to think, you know, when I was at lower levels, and now I laugh at about what I'm about to say, but I was like, you know, you've reached the top, you know, you've reached the C-suite when you become illiterate and you just ask for pictures. And and I mean that in the nicest way, because so much information is hitting them at that level, and they've got to make decisions, and they're big decisions, and they need it presented to them simplistically. And as my career has progressed and I've moved up in band, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm becoming them. I'm not a C-suite at American Express. I want to be clear about that, but I'm like, I need to be fed the information in very succinct sound bites. That's why I like that over as an example, because there's so many things hitting the plate. And as far as advertising, if you will, for yourself, we're in the midst of performance planning right now, or performance reviews, I should say. And two things. One of my peers, who is a female, said, Tereasa, please read what I'm submitting as my self-assessment. You know, and was doubting what she had there. And I thought it was phenomenal and gave her a couple of, things that she could tweak a little bit, but she was really dead on. The other thing is, I have an organization of almost 500 people. I've got 12 direct reports, approximately. And I was told, for your performance review, fill out this little form, and only 3 accomplishments, 3, and state the impact, 3 things that could have gone better. So basically self-reflection and what I would have done differently if I were given the same opportunity, because maybe it didn't go well. And then 3 leadership competencies that I exhibited on how we achieved what we achieved, right? 3. That's it. And yet the budget is $72 million that I'm accountable for. And, 500 people work for me. We get a lot done. I mean, a lot done. And I'm like, how do I distill this down to 3? But it is important, and that is your elevator pitch.
That was a wealth of really great information for you guys. I mean, it was for me. I learned that not too terribly long ago, to have that ready, because truly, when they say, how's it going? They're not really saying, oh, I had a great hike yesterday. And they do want that elevator pitch. So thank you for that. All right. What is the coolest thing you've ever done that you can tell us about?
Fought hackers and won. So we actually had the anonymous hacktivist group come after the city of Phoenix, and this is all public in the news, so I'm not sharing anything sensitive with you, for a span of 6 months. Just hammering at us. We had to pull together a 24/7 team of help desk people and all kinds of people to monitor our systems. And we kept them out while they were simultaneously hacking many organizations. And we actually worked with law enforcement to arrest them globally. So that's very rare in cyber. Often it's so hard to attribute, give attribution to the attacker. That's very difficult to arrest them. So it's a complete unicorn that just brightens my day whenever I think about it.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that's a good one. Mine's not as cool, but still just as good. In a previous role, when I was the manager of information security, governance, and compliance, our website, our external facing websites were getting hammered by traffic. We were getting DDoSed so hard that it was taking our site down, and our customers weren't able to log in and manage their accounts, add new lines, anything like that. Worked with our IT director to get Cloudflare put in, and it took us the better part of a week, because as soon as we would set the baseline, they would up the ante. We knew that they were using botnets. It was horrible. That was probably one of the coolest things, because I never saw so much log information come in, hitting our SIM. That just was crazy. Stopping that was cool.
So this might seem less cool, but I think I'm in the midst of doing something exceptionally cool. And that is, as I had mentioned earlier, asset management and IT service management has come under my remit. And oftentimes we think about identity of who needs access to what, and we think about the person, but things get access to other things. And things have identities, and the level of identity assurance that one has on whether it's a person or a thing, the greater and more sophisticated your access control can be. And to get to a stage of non-persistent access, that's real-time access based on need and based on multiple indicators, is what I'm excited about designing right now with my team. And then secondarily, we've set the bar. May asset management came under my remit, and we will build the best world-class asset management system at American Express, bar none. We're going to have things that maybe many organizations don't have when they think about their asset management, but we want a vertical view and a horizontal view. So for all the customer journeys, what are all the assets associated with that customer journey? Do we understand any incidents and problems early on so that we can prevent some, let's say an outage or something of that nature, just on an operational level, not to mention a security level, all the way down to things like SBOMs and what the software is made of, both when we build it ourselves and when we buy it. Do we have the contractual language necessary to acquire the SBOMs and then continue to get revisions on those SBOMs as those versions go up? APIs are part of the assets. It's not just servers and end user computing devices and software that we buy. It's every network component as well. And so I think we're just commencing an incredibly interesting journey on asset management. And the other cool thing, and we haven't talked about it, but I think it's really important to talk about, and that is the regulatory landscape. American Express, as you know, is global. You may not realize we're actually a bank. And so as a bank, there's heightened levels of standards and expectations. I spend a good portion of my time dealing with audit and regulatory either changes or exams. IAM gets well over 800 inquiries a year for evidence of our controls, the strength and the efficacy of those controls. So one of the things that I think is really cool is getting to pretend that I'm the unlicensed attorney in the room when I get to work with the regulators and walk them through and give them confidence about what it is that we have designed, implemented, and our ability to evidence that. And so for those of you who may not be programmers or technically, in an area of, in school for a technical discipline, there's a whole discipline around risk management. That you will need to understand technology, but you don't have to go build it or architect it at the initiating stages of your career. But you can certainly be very helpful in documenting the controls, figuring out how to measure those controls, and then looking at data and being able to critically analyze that data to show the efficacy of what it is we do.
I think that's a great call out, because at my company, half of the security team is technical and work on technical controls, and half of them do exactly, what she's talking about. So
as an auditor, I can appreciate that. 800 requests for information a year. How much of the year do you spend in audit? 9 months, 10 months?
It's continual. The regulators live in our offices. I mean, they literally have office space at American Express in New York, and they announce their audits, or they call them exams. They announce those sometimes in advance and sometimes not. So all of the banking regulators, so the OCC is a department of the Treasury. They regulate our bank business. The Federal Reserve Board regulates the enterprise as a whole. And then, of course, there's the RBI in India. We have, I'm going to forget the name in Canada. It's an acronym, but there's a regulating body in Canada as well. We did have a bank in Mexico. We had a bank in Russia. And so we had to respond to regulatory inquiries. There we no longer do in either of those countries. But it's constant. It is absolutely constant. And but I find joy in it because one, it makes you feel very proud when you're able to navigate an exam and get a report back out from the regulators that you're doing well. And where there's areas of weakness, it also helps bolster the position, especially if I've already identified it. So we have stuff called management self-identified findings. And where we have management self-identified findings, we might be struggling with funding on occasion, or we might be struggling with getting the necessary collaboration across the organization, because you can't do IAM in a silo. I've got to have applications developed such that they consume our IAM capabilities, as just one example. And so getting that level of attention sometimes can be very useful to improve our security posture, because it brings stakeholders together. It brings the money together. It also paid for my children's education. So I can't complain too much here at GCU.
That's awesome. All right. We have a few minutes left, so we're just going to wrap up here by asking, which you already mentioned, some trends in cybersecurity. What should we be looking for in the future here? And then just any of your vision for the future.
So I would say trends is identity is the new perimeter. So the type of work that she speak, it's Teresa. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm bad with names. Okay. That Teresa is speaking about is extremely important about knowing your assets, knowing who needs access to those assets, because it's a remote workforce. You don't have everybody inside of your perimeter working at a company any longer to where you can really monitor them well. They're accessing it remotely. They're accessing it from their own devices that you can't control what type of antivirus they have on them. So identity, that's the emerging in cyber. And artificial intelligence, machine learning is, so attackers are using AI to say, AI, write me a virus that does XYZ, and it'll spit out a virus. Attackers are also using machine learning to, once they hack someone's email account, analyzing all of their email and creating custom tailored phishing messages that sound like they're from that person. So the attacker sophistication and speed and their ability to script, I would love, if they were good people, I would love to hire them for some of our scripting challenges that we have at my company. Because unfortunately their brilliance is directed in the wrong place. But on cyber, we're having to counteract that with machine learning to analyze behavior of people, of devices, because some devices, if it's like an IoT device, like a badge reader or camera, like you have to analyze the behavior and find the needle in the haystack, because the attacker's sophistication is so much higher. So, and I think the other thing that's emerging is work-life balance. I think a lot of cyber people are starting to get really burnt out, unfortunately. And so I think there's, as a manager, I really advocate for my people's work-life balance. I shelter them a lot from kind of the upper management. I sell their good work, but I'm like, go to your kids' play, go to your kids' soccer game. You don't get those things back. So I think there might be a lot of turnover in the cyber industry that hopefully drives to having a better work-life balance. But
yeah, you're right, Vauda. My employer is actually really, really good about balance. My executive vice president checks in with me probably every few days. Hey, how you doing? Like you said, it's not the, hey, let's talk about the weather. It's the, hey, what you working on? Are you feeling overwhelmed? The focus is, we don't want you to get burned out. I actually got in trouble because I had more than 40 billable hours in 1 week. I had like 43 billable hours 1 week. And I was told, look, I want to see 35. I don't want to see 40. I don't want to see 43. I want to see you taking time to, cultivate your knowledge, to, spend a little time taking a break. I don't want to see 40, 45, 50 billable hours in a week. There's plenty of work. We have interns. So their ability and their willingness to, let me be me and do my work really helps. And that's something that I pass on to my team. You need that focus time, go dark. You need to block your calendar so you can get this report done. Go dark. I don't want to see you online later. If I have someone who's dealing with, recently, one of my employees, their house was struck by lightning, hit the chimney, and the house was a total loss. What do you say when something like that happens? I told them, you take the time that you need. Don't even think about coming into your meetings. We'll take care of that. You've got bigger things to worry about right now. I don't want to see you until you're in a place where you feel that you can even handle coming in for part of the day. Because right now, you need to be with your family. But what do you say? You just have that empathy and that compassion. And I just try to share that. Can you imagine how burned out someone would be if they had something traumatic like that happen and they still have to go to work? They still have to dial in to calls and do their job and act like everything is okay. Meanwhile, in the back of their mind, it's, I got to deal with the insurance company. My gosh, my kids don't have clothes. We got to go live in a hotel for the next year while the house is being, restored. Those are big, big things to worry about. I don't want them to have to worry about a 30-minute phone call.
And I guess it's the perception of what is work-life balance. It's truly, the way I look at it, it's work-life integration, and it's not balance on any given day. But over the arc of the narrative, you've got to have that balance. You've got to have and invest in your family and spend time with your family and walk away and shut down the constancy of what this is. I mean, Lord only knows how many Slacks I've received since we've been here. They're just piling up on the screen, but I'm not nervous about it. You know, we'll get there. The other thing is, you've got to be able to put certain boundaries around, and then you've got to be on a team. You've got to be working for an organization that's invested heavily in cyber, if that's, your career desire, so that when something catastrophic happens to a colleague on the team, which it inevitably will, the rest can come in and say, I've got your back, transfer the work. The work has to continue, generally speaking, but how do we relieve that person so they're not worried? And do we have enough resourcing around to be able to accommodate, that catastrophic event? And they're more common than you think. You'd be maybe surprised, but they're more common than you might think. The other thing that I would say is, you've got to have a passion for it, because you will invest a lot of time. It is a serious profession, and there are real threat actors. And so being able to really enjoy it and love it allows you to spend probably more time than, 40 hours a week on it. But you've got to then craft how do you do that work-life integration. The other side of it is you're financially exceptionally well rewarded in this profession. And for that, organizations expect something from you. And so to not acknowledge that would be probably not the holistic view either, right? And so American Express has all sorts of programs for mental health, all sorts of programs for family medical leave, parental leave, as well as just we culturally, as leaders, work to make sure that team members have what they need when they need it, when life does change. But you gotta love you gotta love the profession, because you will dedicate a lot of hours to it. That's for sure.
You have heard some really gems today. I want to give you guys a chance to ask a few questions, because I know you have some. But what I also want you to do is I want you to think about your takeaways from what you've heard. How are you going to, in the next couple of days and this weekend, build your courage? How are you going to communicate with people around you? How are you going to refine some of those skills? Put yourself into a situation in the next couple of days where you have a conversation about whatever it might be, right? So take away some of these great nuggets. Who do you want to mentor your? Maybe some of you need to seek out a mentor. Take time to do that. All right. So questions.
Hi, my name's Cole. I'm a junior here at GCU. One kind of practical question for you guys as a hiring manager. What are projects that we can do as students that kind of make us stand out from the crowd?
One might be something around Gen AI. So we talked about how the threat actors will use it, but American Express is going to use AI and Gen AI to propel our business. What we need to do is secure Gen AI. We need to secure LLM models. We need to ensure that, data cannot get injected, or the formula, if you will, be tampered with, that creates hallucination and bias type attacks. And so what would be, I think, notable and interesting would be what a project that secures an LLM, something along those lines, maybe.
I think so. And, another project that I could think of would be, depending on the area that you want to be working in. For example, with me, when we work with our interns, we have them support us when we're documenting policies and standards and procedures. And many times we have to align those policies and procedures with regulatory requirements like Sarbanes-Oxley and PCI. So if that's an area of interest for you, invest some time in studying those. Many of those standards are available for free online, and that could be helpful too, especially if you want to work in the governance, risk, and compliance space.
I would say to apply yourself to a problem that you're really passionate about, because what's going to come across to me more in an interview where you're sharing about that project is the methodology that you used, how you communicated it, how you presented it, and your passion for it and your hunger to learn and explore would be more important than probably the subject in an interview.
Great. We have another question.
Hi. So I am a junior this year, studying cybersecurity at GCU. I just had a question regarding certifications, and as like CISOs and hiring managers, what kind of certifications do you guys look for in potential employees?
So we did cover that in the conversation earlier,
Oh, gotcha.
and that's okay. So correct me if
The
I'm
Security
wrong.
Plus.
Yeah, Security Plus was the main one they talked about, but then they also talked about holding off on certs until you have started your job. Oftentimes you need that work experience. Is that
Gotcha.
accurate?
Okay.
Go ahead and hand your mic then to the nice lady next to you. She had a question.
Hi, my name is Idara. I'm a senior here at GCU. And I wanted to ask, I'm a business information systems major, and I wanted to ask a little bit about what the transition was like going from product management into cybersecurity and like the learning curve.
So I think for me, the learning curve was over the course of several years, right? But starting in the product side, I guess the way that you could look at it is, what is it about my application? How can I design my application to consume, for example, the IAM services like the single sign-on capabilities? How do I ensure that I'm not creating my own ID table in my application so that I'm trying to manage the identities and the IDs, the authenticating IDs of individuals? So understanding IAM might be a good place to start, and then compare your application to how it's designed relative to consuming the corporate capabilities around single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, the governance platforms that do lifecycle management on IDs and things of that nature. It might help with that transition in that regard. The other would be if you understand application code to some degree, how is that application speaking to the database, if you will, and authenticating to the database? And if you've got web-facing applications, looking at that and seeing what would a threat actor do if that application were poorly coded, if the URL would allow for SQL injection queries, things of that nature. So take your business application understanding and put a threat actor's hat on and see how they might destroy or damage your brand by entry into the organization through application weakness. That might help.
Yeah, and I would say some areas that you could also apply your skills would be threat modeling. So is exactly what she's talking about. To look at a system, map out the processes, and understand the weaknesses. So project management. Also, more in leadership, but you can work your way into that position, is our business information security officers, who are like they're assigned to a specific business unit. Like maybe I'm in security, but I just work with our global supply chain, and my job is to understand their processes, make sure that they're secure end to end, and then you're less technical, but you have enough of a technical understanding of business information systems. But if your passion is more interfacing with the business, that's another route that you can go.
Related to that is business continuity. So understanding the business applications, what the business processes are, and then ensuring the resiliency of those business processes through technology might be another avenue that is more natural to come into technology and information security.
Okay, well, let's do a couple more questions, and then we'll have time also. Looks like the mic's headed that way, then we'll come back.
Hello. Is it okay? So when coming into the field as a possible, in any case, are there any particular pieces of knowledge or skills? Because I know you guys mentioned soft skills are important, certifications can be helpful in the future. Is there anything specific that you guys would say do help to show drive or intention or hunger, like you guys have been saying?
I would say when you're looking to interview for positions, I think one of the key things that would be helpful is, have a trusted family member or a coach to help you, because sometimes when you step into an interview, you can freeze, get nervous, and then you just, all the words just fly out the window. So if you can have someone to kind of bounce ideas off and just run through scenarios where people are asking you questions, you can emphasize your drive, your passion, and your work ethic, and talk about some of the great things that you've done through your education career. And I say education career because it really is that. For so many years, each one of you has dedicated time, effort, money. It's a huge level of effort to do what you're doing. And that should not be pushed off to the side as, oh yeah, well, you finished college, now you meet the minimums. No, you've done some great stuff here.
And it's a profession that requires continual learning. But what I would say is a couple of things, and I think Deb hit on it. Make sure you role play. Like literally find somebody you trust who who hires people, right? So that they can have you do an interview with them. I offer time frequently to our colleagues, and we were talking as a leadership team. We have different band levels. So band 35 might be sort of a manager. You may be a people manager or a project type manager. And some were aspiring to be a director, which would require that you lead a team, maybe of 12, 15 people, something around that size. And they're very competent at what they're currently doing. But what we realized is they were woefully unprepared for an interview because they didn't realize all that happens when you're a director. You're managing a business. You have to demonstrate the business acumen as an example, right? You have to be able to go from dealing with a financial issue to a personnel issue to a strategic determination to removing an obstacle to get a tactical initiative done. And so what I would say is you want to talk to people and you want to practice that interview, number one. Number two, don't get yourself into a mindset that it's got to be scripted. I like a conversation because a lot comes out in conversation. So my style is I start the interview and I say, and I let them know, this is going to be much of a conversation. I do have a list of questions that I do want to cover. I want to cover certain technical aptitude. I want to also cover some of the leadership competencies and some of your thoughts on how you think about business and how you think about the profession. So I'll ask that series of questions, maybe not in any particular order. And then I encourage the candidate to always try to provide me a situation. So don't just tell me, oh, this is my philosophy, this is how I think about leadership, but show me a situation or tell me about a situation in which you've demonstrated that. And so that it makes the conversation, it makes the interview a conversation. And with that, what I realized, because early on, I just went down my list. It's like, okay, it's an interview. I got to hit these questions. And as an interviewer, I didn't get the best candidates as a result of that style. And the conversational interview is much, much more effective because it allows the candidate to share a much broader perspective and a much more authentic self than just answering a set of questions. And so practice it with somebody you trust who is a hiring leader. I wouldn't just say, go home and ask mom or dad unless they're hiring leaders who have a lot of experience hiring and asking the questions because it'll benefit you more.
Great. Those are some great insights, and some tactical things to add is to Google common interview questions. They're going to ask you about your strengths and weaknesses, how you overcome your weaknesses. They're going to ask you about a time you had a disagreement with one of your team members and how did you make nice. They're going to ask you, when's the time you disagreed with your boss, and what, there's certain questions that are pretty common that it's good to have responses to, but still, to Teresa's point, to have a natural flow of conversation as much as possible. The last thing is usually at the end of the interview, they'll say, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us? Don't sit there and say, no, I'm good. That's again, have your elevator pitch, have the 4 things. Well, I'm the right person for this job because I demonstrated, my applied project, and I demonstrated, XYZ, my critical thinking skills. I have a, 3.9 GPA. I'm a hard worker. I follow through. I care about my team members, really whatever you excel at, have that elevator pitch ready at the end of that interview.
And questions, because I end it with, do you have any questions for me? Right. This is a fit for in both directions, if you will. And so that'll tell me a little bit about somebody's innate curiosity, how much they may have studied American Express or the position.
Yep. Absolutely. I was about to touch on that. So, do your homework. You've gotten really good at doing homework here. So now, when you're on the job search, it really does serve you well to do your due diligence in audit speak, due diligence. But, do a little bit of research on the company, find out what they do and how they tick, and find 1 or 2 ways that you can relate your passions, your interests to not only that position, but show that you have the ability to see how this position, this role fits into the bigger picture. One place where a lot of folks may not always feel that, they hit the mark in their work is that sometimes they just don't know how what they do feeds into the bigger picture. But if you can look at that job description and you do a little bit of research on the company, you can see how what I do feeds into the mission and the goals of the company. And that really shows that you care about not only the work, but you really want to make a difference.
Yeah, a great example would be, what is your definition of a success for this role within 1 month, 3 months, 6 months? And then it shows that you're driven to succeed and you want to know, but it also gives you an idea of what would I be doing on a daily basis, and would I enjoy that, or is this the kind of company I want to work for, or what's the day-to-day work life? What is, walk me through your day. What is your day like? In this type of role. Those are good questions that show engagement, but it's a two-way interview.
And I do want to encourage you, a couple of you have asked questions around, well, how can I get this job, if you will? How do I start my career when I'm just graduated? Maybe I don't have a lot of work experience. So right now I have 4 GCU graduates working on my team alone. And it's far greater when you look at American Express as a whole. And some of those came in as interns. Some did not work as interns for us, but I became aware of them because, I come here and I meet people and I meet students. And so don't be discouraged. What we're saying is not just platitudes. There's a hiring track record of early and new graduates at American Express.
That's awesome. Okay, one last question, and then we're going to we'll let them wrap up with the final comments, and then we'll let you interact a little bit, okay? All right, go ahead.
So my name is Dalen. I am a junior majoring in cybersecurity here. Are there any red flags or anything that you see on a resume or in person interviewing with someone that kind of is an immediate all right, let's put them in the no pile, right? Is there anything that,
Yeah, anybody who can't directly answer a question pretty rapidly, if you start wandering and take me on a journey, I'm trying to get through a series of, key points. And I know some people have maybe difficulty being succinct. So yeah, I would say that's really important because that also tells me the pace at which you move. I used to work for somebody who, as an interviewer, she would have them get up. She's like, "Oh, I'm thirsty. You thirsty? Let's go take a walk." And she wanted to observe how they interacted in the cafeteria getting water, how quickly they were walking. Could they keep pace with her? Were they, multiple, steps behind? So don't be shocked if someone might ask you to move about the building, and they're probably observing your behaviors and how you interact with one another, and maybe a little bit about pace.
I like that. I have yet to be on an interview where they conducted an exercise like that. Personally, when I'm hiring or conducting interviews, I look for a few things, just stepping back to Covey. Can do, will do, and will fit. As I've discovered, especially in cyber, it's a skill heavy field. Whether you're working on the deeply technical side and you're building and architecting solutions or maintaining those solutions, or if you're working in more of the GRC and the risk management side, you really need to have folks that are dedicated to the cause. But I also look for that will fit piece because you need to have really good harmony and synergy with your team. And sometimes just no matter how hard you try, you may get that odd person in there who just doesn't quite mix in. But I do a lot of conversational interviews like Tereasa does, just to really get the feel for the person. Because you don't want folks that are going to rub each other the wrong way. It can create a lot of conflict, and in worst cases, when it's not addressed, it can become toxic, and nobody likes that. But I really look for that skill set. Can they do the job? And will they do the job? And will they fit with my team? Those are the 3 questions in the back of my head as I'm having that discussion with a potential candidate.
So, I would say from the resume perspective, if I see somebody that's job hopping every 9 months, 1 year, sometimes even, 18 months, 2 years, that's a big red flag for me because it takes time to upskill people and to train them in your processes. And so if I see people someone that's just chasing the money, it's much stronger. Like my first job I had for 5 years, and I'm not saying stay somewhere forever and don't pursue other opportunities, but I can say that I got the next leg up, and I was actually able to promote to CISO within 15 years of my career, which is pretty soon because I really demonstrated that I dug in and did everything that I could at the different companies that I worked for. I know that's not really popular today, but so that I would say that's a red flag on the resume. In the interview, anyone who's throwing their boss or their company under the bus or just complaining, or they're running away from some job and to come to your job. Oh, the place I work is so horrible. And they will, if someone asks you like, well, why are you leaving your company? It's you want to find some nice, even if you are running from a dumpster fire, you want to find some nice way of saying that you're looking to grow your career and make it more positive.
And maybe an easy acronym are the 4 C's, right? So I'm looking culture fit, character, competency, and calling. So I kind of look to try to understand that individual relative to the position in those 4 areas. That may help. It's easy to remember.
Yeah, and sorry, one last thing is this is a little bit of my soapbox for this generation. I see a lot of you on your computers, on your phones. We're addicted to this now. We're like stuck here. And unfortunately, it has done you a great disservice in the ability to really interact in a face-to-face human interconnection way. So I would set boundaries on your devices and learn how to really connect with people, because if someone's just like really shut down in the interview, they're not making eye contact, they spend more time on their devices than they interact with other human beings, it starts to get more and more awkward. So set limits on your devices, use them and a couple hours a day, put them down, go ride a bike.
Yeah, and I always say I'm 3 squares, meaning I will eat 3 meals a day every single day, and that's the way to do work and in conversation. So we have a cafeteria at American Express, so I'll meet anybody for breakfast, I'll meet anybody for lunch, I'll always go out for dinner. So it's a way to have conversation that is in a kind of a comforting way, but it really helps with connection.
I will say I worked for American Express for a while in your IAM unit, and their cafeteria is amazing.
There you go. Awesome.
And better, we've got a new building.
Awesome. I'll add one thing to what they're saying. Sometimes the interview starts before you even walk into that particular office. Sometimes they have the person at the gate paying attention. Did you wave at them? Were you friendly? So the interview does not just start when you don't necessarily put on your good face when you walk into that office. It starts before that. Okay, final comments. Anything that you were just hoping to share and didn't have an opportunity?
Thank you. There was something I think I did cover it, but just again, thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for your passion for the discipline. No matter where you end up working and no matter what the field is, it's necessary for the security of our nation, of the world, of good people, if you will. And whether you find yourself, thwarting terrorists, organized crime, nation states, it is a very noble profession. And I'm just excited to look up at this room and say, wow, these people are going to join me in this noble profession. I am really excited about it. Thank you.
You look at how many people are in here. This is an amazing collection of souls. Wow, this is amazing. This is incredible. And I, like Tereasa said, I want to thank each and every one of you for having us come and talk to you today, but also for taking the time and making that investment in yourself to come and, absorb some knowledge and listen to some folks who, have worked in the industry for a while. My parting wisdom would be it's a big, wide world. There is a lot out here. There's a lot to see. There's a lot to do. So love what you're doing. If you love what you're doing, you're not going to work a day in your life. You're going to enjoy every minute of it. Like Tereasa says, and I do too. I can't wait to get logged in the morning because I'm like, oh, I got this great stuff I got to work on. Yeah.
I too am super excited about the next generation of cybersecurity professionals, and I wanted to just make sure people know that at Freeport we have internship programs. Often we hire juniors and seniors. I hope it's not too late. I think it's around this time of year, maybe August, September, October, where you need to apply and start doing interviews. Two of the people on my team actually were interns from Grand Canyon University, and one of them is just like he's already nipping the heels of engineer, and he's only been with us 3 years, like just complete rock star. Got his master's in cybersecurity from Grand Canyon. So yeah, apply yourself to those internships. And I think what's really important, because this is a women's panel, I'm speaking to the women today. It's really important to nurture yourself and to have the self-care that it takes to sustain in cybersecurity. I can honestly say I'm not as excited to come to work as these two ladies, but when I look at why, it's because I haven't set enough boundaries to spend the time with my family, to nurture myself spiritually too. So I'm starting to do that now. That it's really important. Like as women, we're fed by being in our communities, giving back to our communities, spending time with our children, our family, and nurturing ourselves spiritually and whatever that looks like. So that is so important to have longevity in a career. And the other thing that I'll say is don't be afraid to go into cyber and to try it out and find different paths. I mean, I started out as a desktop support intern, replacing computers in 100-degree unair conditioned classrooms in Texas summer. So and found my way, network intern, okay, systems admin. Oh, I don't really like this. And one day my boss came down and sat some firewalls down on my desk and said, I want you to install these this weekend. Yes, sir. So I went and bought a book. I read it and within a week and did it. So just, those jumps, those opportunities in your career, don't be afraid to take them and to learn from it. Yeah, I think that's what I'd want to say.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And those of you in the room, you heard lots of good nuggets here today. And we just heard about women, take care of yourself, but men, it's for you too. And it's for each other, right? So throughout your life, you're going to have relationships, whether it's a husband, wife, or a friend, or a friend group, whatever it might be. Help take care of each other. All right. Thank you for coming, and please interact, and we will see you at the next event.